And welcome to this month's sector call. I'm happy to see some faces on camera. I know it's early, but I love to see the faces. So if you're comfortable, please come on camera. My name is Deja Cyrus, and I'm the manager of organizational development for our sector support team here at United Way of Central Indiana. I see some really great acts of self-care in the chat, so please keep them coming through. I might have to, I won't say steal, but borrow some of these. But I love the engagement. I love hearing about how we take care of ourselves, especially during such tumultuous times. So please continue to feel free to drop those in the chat as you think of them. But I am so excited to have you guys join us for today's sector call, Mind Matters, Elevating Mental Health Awareness in Our Communities. For some of you, because I wasn't aware before I did the research, for some of you who aren't aware, there are just so many mental wellness focused days that occupy the month of April, including the month itself, which serves as National Minority Health Month, Stress Awareness Month, Counseling Awareness Month. There's just so many. So we've got a really powerful and timely conversation lined up centering the importance of mental health. Both within the communities we serve and within ourselves as nonprofit professionals and human service leaders, because we all know that that work can just be, really heavy sometimes. So in today's discussion, we'll explore how we can break down stigma, build culturally competent support systems, and foster environments that truly prioritize mental wellness. So we have some expert panelists today, Raymond Ashiel of Balance Period and Bianca Harris of the Phoenix Nicholas Center and Rest Black Men Rest, who will share just, some insights, tools, and personal experiences to help us, reimagine what sustainable leadership looks like and organizational wellness and how we can, foster and cultivate those environments. So whether you're looking for some practical strategies, some fresh perspectives, or just simply a moment to, reflect and recharge on this literally Good Friday, this space is for you. It's for us. So by the end of the discussion, we hope that you'll walk away, feeling inspired, informed, and equipped to promote mental well-being in your organization while also taking care of your own. So let's go ahead and dive in. Raymond, Bianca, welcome to the sector call. We're super excited to have you both. I want to just start by level setting a little bit. So if you don't mind, Ray, I'll start with you, and then Bianca, I'll transition to you. Just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background as it pertains to just mental well-being and why this work is so important.
Yeah, well, thank you, Deja, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Raymond Ashiel. I do also go by Recovery Ray. You can feel free to ask me why later. I have a background in kinesiology, so I got my degree from IU, and I've been working in the health and wellness industry for over the last decade now. Mental health didn't become important to me until it was relevant in my own life. From my educational background, I was really just taught about fitness and nutrition, but until I experienced some personal health trauma that prompted me to start thinking about health from a more holistic perspective, I started to realize that there needed to be habits that I practice in order to promote my mental health so that not only I can live a long life, but I could be happy, right, while I am here. Because I truly believe that the quality of our mental health impacts every other element of our health and well-being. There's a lot of different dimensions to well-being. So that's why it's really important for me to help empower and inspire other people to start thinking and behaving differently around how they care for themselves mentally, so that we can really create the foundation for health and longevity, both in our own families, but also in our broader community. So that's my background.
Absolutely. And Bianca, if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about yourself and your background in this work and why it's just so important and vital.
Mhm. Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca Harris. I am a licensed mental health therapist, and I've been in the mental health space for, I was talking to my friend, and this is year 20. And I was like, whew, child, I got to go get some color in this hair or something, because when you say that, you realize how long I have been able to be in a space to promote wellness, to promote health. Mental health has always been very important to me because I come from a family that I saw struggle severely to the points of death in certain cases because of poor mental health and poor insight into what wellness can look like, and a lot of stigma that is associated, especially in communities of color, with mental health. And so for me, it was vitally important because it affected my family, and that's personal to me. So I started my kind of career in mental health, trying to figure out um, where can I have the most impact, and be able to reach the most. And I was fortunate enough in to be able to have my first job at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, which is a level 4 maximum security prison in Southern Indiana, where I got to see firsthand the impact of late diagnosis and late acknowledgement of mental wellness, and what happens. So I created the Phoenix Nicholas Center and Rest Black Man Rest to specifically address the disparities, the gap, and the misinformation around mental health wellness in Black and Brown communities.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, Bianca and Ray. I want to kind of just, dive into the discussion a little bit here. Bianca, I'll start with you. I heard you mention Rest Black Men Rest and Nicholas Center. What does it mean for, because we have a lot of nonprofit professionals and specifically human service professionals on the call. So, what does it mean for an organization to actively practice cultural competence and not just have things in place that are kind of just checking a box? Like, how can leaders start that work in a meaningful way?
You start with listening, asking questions and listening to the answers of those that you're trying to service, whether that is your staff that you are working with to put this information out, or whether that is the clients that you're serving. The stories are important because when we listen to the stories of the people that we're serving, they'll tell us the need. They'll tell us how we can show up for them in ways that are authentic. So when we talk about cultural competence and being present, it's not just about saying, I have a Black staff member, I have a Latino staff member, and I have an Asian staff member. So I'm going to have celebrate the days. It's tell me what is important to you. Tell me what makes you feel seen, what makes you feel validated, what makes you feel important. And when we listen to those stories, what we find out is that it's about connection and authenticity. So the way we keep things culturally competent is we listen and we validate the stories that people are telling us, because the person who's going through it is going to be the best and most accurate account of what is going on with them and what is happening. And it allows us the opportunity to be able to sit in the answer and figure out how that can either meld with or what those triggers are, so that we can have conversation to bridge those triggers instead of having conflict and say, I'm just doing this because I have to.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And Ray, I know I heard you mention balance period. I know it's a firm that promotes mindfulness and intentional habits. So I'd just love to hear from you. Excuse me. What does balance really mean in the context of human services work? So, like, how can individuals start cultivating balance when, as we all know, sometimes the systems around us are somewhat unbalanced? So, yeah, just would love to hear from you, like, what balance really means and how us human service workers can actually cultivate that with so much disorder and imbalance around us.
Yeah, and the word balance, people often think it's like, 50-50, or evenly proportional, and that's not always the case. I think, what I would encourage or thought to be is like, well, what is my capacity and how am I honoring that capacity in this season of life right now, right? Because it's going to look a little bit different for everyone. I talk a lot about self-awareness too, because self-awareness is the prerequisite for self-care. So if you're not aware of where you are and what your capacity is, you're not going to be able to give yourself what you need when you need it to promote your mental health, your physical health, and your overall performance. So for me, I would say it really starts with creating systems to understand what your individual capacity is, and then understand the people around you's capacity so that you all can honor that. And that will then, show up in the way that you're able to serve, the groups and the communities that your organization serves. But if you all aren't taking care of yourself and creating that balance for yourself, then you'll be unable to fulfill that purpose. So in like a practical term, right, you're thinking about, okay, if I am, noticing that I need a break, right? Like I'm burning myself out with the work that I'm doing right now. Well, what can I do, with the collaboration of my team to offload some of that work so that I can take some space to recharge, to reflect, to do what I need to do in order to come back and be able to perform, at the level that I want to perform. So that's where I would say balance is something that we create, and it starts with us understanding our capacity and then creating systems to be able to honor that when we need to.
Sure. That quote, self-awareness is a prerequisite for self-care. Wow, very powerful. Couldn't agree more. But I heard you speak to capacity a lot. And as we know, sometimes it can feel like that, though that's just few and far between with all of the busy and chaos that goes on within our lives on a day-to-day basis. So um, nonprofits, sometimes we tend to operate with like a do more with less. We have to make work what we have and roll with it. So what would you say are some real strategies that organizations can implement to build a culture that prioritizes wellness over burnout? Ray, I can start with you since you kind of opened this discussion, and Bianca, I'll transition to you.
Yeah, I think first is shifting our mindset around like self-care and it being something that's selfish. Um,
Mm,
so when you really think about it, the intention behind self-care is to promote your health and well-being so that you're able to show up more fully, more authentically in the spaces that you get an opportunity to show up in, right? So it's actually a selfless act by you prioritizing time to invest in your health and your well-being. So that's where I would say kind of start with that shift. And then when the whole concept of doing more with less, um, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Just based on the reality of nonprofit work. But I also think it's important to learn how to leverage technology and leverage collaboration in order to free up more space, right? And you're not freeing up space to fill it with more things to do. You're freeing up
right.
space to rest and recharge. So I think, those are some of the ways that an organization can start to think about ways to create more space to saying, well, what can we do around the technology that we have access to and collaborations, not only internally, but also with other organizations to be able to just leverage what we have in order to create more space for our people to prioritize time for their health and their well-being.
For sure. And then Bianca, I want to allow some space for you to weigh in as well. Just, nonprofits, we typically operate with a do more with less mindset. So what are some real strategies that organizations can implement to help build that culture that prioritizes wellness over the burnout?
Ray hit the nail on the head talking about this capacity. Learning the difference between
Mhm.
capacity and ability is going to be crucial because your ability will always surpass your capacity. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is in nonprofit work, you come into the space not because you want to make a lot of money and I'm going to, move. You come in this work because you have passion, which means you have a lot of capabilities. You have a lot of ability to do multiple things. You can wear multiple hats. That's one of the signs of being able to work in nonprofit is this idea of being able to wear multiple hats, which is great, but that is an ability, not in a capacity. There's a lot of things that I can do, but my capacity says these are the only things that I can do. So what a tangible thing is what Ray absolutely talked about is a cognitive shift. We're shifting the narrative of I'm not doing more with less. I am maximizing the resources that I have. Because when we say I'm doing more with less, we are putting ourselves in the mindset of I'm working from a deficit. I'm working
Right.
from behind the ball. I'm working from lack. When it's not working from lack, it may be a lack of financial resources, which is what we deem as success. But truth of the matter is finances have been tight and good everywhere, right? And we have good years in nonprofit, we have not so great years. But what we always have a robust access to is self in the work. So we're not working from lack, right? We're working from resources. So the first thing we do is check how we talk. I'm not talking from a place of deficit. I'm talking from a place of power, of resource, and I'm being selfish or selfless, excuse me, and doing my self-care so I can go and talk to my coworker and say, "Hey, I'm actually at capacity, but I know this needs to be done. Can you assist?" And that "can you" allows that coworker to say, to check their capacity, because they have the ability to do it, but they can check their capacity in real time and say, "Yes, I can do this part, and maybe we can talk to this person about this part." Now we have collaboration, and we can help to create increased communication to decrease burnout.
For sure. And I'd love to explore strategies with you for a second. I know the Phoenix Nicholas Center supports individuals and family. Well, one of the things that the Phoenix Nicholas Center does is supports individuals and families through clinical mental health care. So, for nonprofit and human service organizations, what are some practical ways they can make their internal spaces more trauma informed and healing centered, which is open to their staff, the clients, and beyond. But what are some of those practical ways that these organizations can make those internal spaces more trauma informed and healing centered?
So I'm going to say that the best thing you can do is start in-house before you start with your clients. Because if home is not great, then we're not pushing out the best product. So the first thing that we can do to make it more trauma informed is to look at the culture and the milieu and the climate of the environment that we're working in. And this is not a situation where we want to make it a blame fest, right? We want to make it a problem and solution fest. We have to be able to, I'm saying we, like I work for them, but in general, right? When you are looking at the culture and the climate and how do we make things so that we can be more informed, we have to know what we're being informed about. And the first thing that that comes with is true understanding and creating safe space. So the inner office has to have a safe space where we can have dialogue about things that are going well, things that we see successes in, but as well as things that we could see a potential growth in. And
Mm,
it's not a situation where I'm going to tell everybody what's wrong. It's I feel overwhelmed by this task. A potential solution could be, right? So now we're thinking solution focused,
mm,
not deficit problem focused. So when we focus on the culture of the environment that we're working in, what will happen is, like Ray said, we're going to focus on what is impacting us in our care. And so we'll know that how our care is impacting how we're showing up at the office. So if I have a place where I can take a 15-minute break, and you don't have to ask me any questions. I can go into a room and leave me alone for those minutes.
mm,
I can block out 30 minutes, an hour for lunch every day, whether I eat lunch or not, but that is just my care time, right? Checking with the milieu of your service providers is what we overlook a lot of times in this field, but we pour into our clients. That will
for
be my
sure.
first strategy.
Absolutely. And right, I know that you consult a lot with businesses and nonprofits. Um, so for you specifically, how do you bring mindfulness practices to organizations and communities that may not initially see themselves reflected in traditional wellness spaces?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Typically start with just trying to destigmatize mindfulness and like kind of extract it away from what people commonly think. They think like, seated meditation. And I,
Mm,
I just really simplify it to just being it's just intentional breathing, right? And it's actually a tool that our bodies have to regulate what's happening in our mind, right? We can, either increase our level of arousal or decrease it based on our breathing. So in destigmatizing it, right, it's one, sharing just the facts about breathing, sharing my story around how breathing changed my life. When I was looking for different habits to promote my health and wellness, I came across mindfulness. And I grew up in the church, not a denominational Christian, and I was told not to do that. I was told that meditation was bad, and it took me kind of overcoming that and giving it a try in order to realize, oh, this is something that can really improve my mental and emotional health. And so after I share the story, I then give people an experience. So we go through a breathing practice together, a simple, 3 to 5 minute experience. I call them mindful moments. And you're going to feel it. You're going to feel how you feel before, and you're going to feel how you feel after. And then I always encourage the, organizations that I get to work with to integrate moments into their day, right? And I call them mindful moment reminders. So you're able to set gentle reminders in your phone. You can schedule them for whatever time you want. It's not loud, it's just a vibration. When they go off, you use that space to pause and breathe, right? Take a few deep breaths. You refocus your attention and energy on the present moment. You feel more grounded, you feel more clear minded, and then you keep that level of awareness with you as you go into whatever that next activity is for you. So that's typically the process that I go through. And when you're thinking about doing it like longer term, especially from a leadership perspective, it's really about modeling. And I figure we'll talk more about modeling a little bit later. But not only, by you doing it, but then integrating it into the interactions that you're having with your teams, right? You can have a mindful moment before you start a meeting. It doesn't have to take long. You just have everyone, okay, we're going to start with just a moment of silence and stillness. Let's take a few deep breaths. It's as simple as that. And that will start, integrating that habit into everyone's workflow, which will have a positive ripple effect as time progresses.
For sure. And I will say I'm subscribed to your newsletter. Anytime I see the mindful moment with the circle rotating, I'm like, okay, even if it's not on time, I'm like, this is a good moment to pause and breathe. So thank you for sharing. We have just a ton of nonprofit leaders who are doing amazing work at their community organizations, but a lot of leaders on this call. So leading teams, leading organizations, leading community charges, just various leaders within the community. So I'd just love to hear from you. What would you say to a community leader or an executive director or whomever who feels guilty when they do have to take their time to rest or slow down, because that's real. Let's 100% be honest. With the way that the world works today, moving faster is better. Everything is microwave fixes. Like, let's get to the next task and let's continue to push the narrative. So what would you say to any of these leaders who just, whenever they do take the time to slow down or rest or go on vacation, they're constantly checking their email or feeling as if, oh, I can't really take a break or a week vacation until this period of time? What would be your advice to them? Ray, I'll begin with you, and then Bianca, I would love to hear your input as well.
Yeah, the first thing that I would say is just, congratulations, you're human, right? And just affirm that feeling and validate it. Say it's normal, it's natural to feel that way, especially when, self-care isn't something that you are, actively practicing. But with any, emotion that you feel, right, you have an opportunity to change your relationship with it, right? So when you experience that guilt, right, initially, going through a process to acknowledge what you're experiencing, to like notice in your body where you're feeling it, and to process it in a way, right? Remembering why you're doing what you're doing. So, understanding that, I'm doing this to promote my health so that then I can come back and be a better version of myself for the actual people that I want to serve, right? Doing a process like that over time will, help so that even when you do experience guilt, because it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience guilt anymore, right? It's
Mhm.
just going to be a different way that you respond to it, that you process it, so that you can still engage in the behavior that's in alignment with your health and well being in the midst of that guilt being present. So that's what I would recommend, right? I would say just, develop a system or a process to, respond to that guilt differently so that you can
Mhm.
still practice those behaviors that promote your health and well being.
That's really good feedback. I actually need to take some notes on that because I definitely sometimes fall victim to that. But Bianca, I want to allow space for you to chime in as well. Just any advice you'd give to any leader who feels guilty when they do take a moment to rest or to slow down.
Yeah. I would ask the question primarily of why are other people's feelings more important than yours? Um, because you feeling guilty is because other people's comfort is more important than your ability to rest. And I would just challenge you to answer that question as to why. Why are they more important than you? Why are they more valid than you? Why are their feelings or more worthy of being honored than yours? Um, and if you can't answer that question, then you probably need to rest. Because I do it all the time. I have been guilty. I'll be up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Let me get this note together. Let me get this. I'm on vacation. I leave to go out of town tomorrow. Right. And I've been hustling to get things done because you know what I'm not taking with me? My computer or my work phone. Because
Mhm.
guess what? Them 4 days, if the world burns down in those 4 days, I couldn't save it anyway. I don't have I don't have that ability or that capacity. So as leaders, it is up to us to be able to model what we are encouraging others to do. So if I'm
Mm,
encouraging my staff, I'm encouraging my clients to take rest, and I'm not doing it, then I'm a hypocrite. I'm telling people what I don't actually believe to work or believe to be true. So I would challenge the narrative of why do I feel bad for taking time off? And like Ray said, guilt comes up, shame comes up because we as a society have made busyness the worship and not the work. So if
mm,
I can be productive, if I can have numbers, if I can give you data points, if I can give you stats, all things that are important, but if I can show that in this day or in this time period I got all of these done, you'll think you know, you as a society will think I'm efficient, I am productive, and you will reward me in some way. Usually, we think that that is compensation. But we work in nonprofit, right? We've been in there. We know that's not it. What we get rewarded with is stress, anxiety, frustration, lack of sleep, fluctuating weight, all these things, because we've now decided that productivity is important and not our self care.
absolutely. Yeah, boundaries are real, everyone, and healthy to an extent. I was at an event yesterday, and one of the speakers said that the value that you bring to the table surpasses your numbers, the productivity that you bring to an organization or company. So,
Because
um,
if you leave, guess what happens? Your position is backfilled, and
yeah,
it's backfilled quickly,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Your
Yeah.
family might get a condolences or I'm sorry, but your position is backfilled. So you
Mhm.
have to take the moment to realize that you for yourself are not replaceable. No matter what job it is, they will always find a replacement because time goes. So if we're not pouring into ourselves, we cannot expect others to be able to do what we're telling them if they don't even see us doing it.
Mhm.
Right?
Absolutely. And I'm happy that we were able to, give some actionable strategies for that. So let's take it a step further. So now that we are encouraging leaders, to not feel bad for taking a moment, how can they hold themselves accountable to that? So Bianca, I'll start with you, and then Ray will open it up for you as well. How can leaders at any level, not just executives, not just ones that are leading the organizations, but ones that are leading teams, ones that are again, leading just powerful community charges, programs, initiatives. How can they hold themselves accountable um, and each other, the people around them,
Mhm.
to a culture of emotional well-being?
Get you a friend. Get you a friend. Get you a friend. All right. That friend that you're already talking to about work anyway, whether they're in the space or not. Because what that friend is going to do is they're going to hear the tone in the issues of what you're saying as you're processing through. And they're gonna ask questions like, man, I'm so tired at work. I feel overwhelmed with all this paperwork. So hey, what did you do to kind of shift some of that paperwork? What else we know? What plan are we going to put in place? A friend will hold us accountable because a friend is someone that we are choosing out of love, out of connection, and out of shared ideology. So this is not someone that is my friend because I grew up with you and we're supposed to be friends, but you don't really understand the part of work that I'm at. No, this is that person that you're talking to about work things that says, okay, I hear you. What choices do you want to make? And we're going to set up a time. All right. I have a friend that we meet every 2 weeks for 1 hour and we have an agenda. And I set the agenda. These are the things that I need to be able to get accomplished in these next 2 weeks. And I know that if I don't have them, I'm going to have to go back to him and explain to him why I didn't do it. And not
Mm,
that he is over me, right? Not that he's like, oh, you got to, but this is my friend and I know he wants to see me be great, and I want to be accountable to him to be able to share in good news. So that is going to force me to have to be able to set realistic expectations.
right.
So that's what we do. We get a realistic expectation of what needs to be done, and we find that friend, whether that be in the office or whether that be coworker, that says, I hear you, I see you, and these are the things I'm going to check in with you to see where you're at. But that friend also supports you. If we're not meeting those goals, helps us to reframe it or come up with other things like what is the other barrier that we need to work through.
Sure. Thank you. And Ray, any accountability practices or insights, advice that you can give as well?
Yeah, I mean, love the friend, right? I think having an accountability partner is
Mhm.
for me, it's definitely an effective strategy. In addition to just having people, I also, people that are just like peers. I also have like coaches. So like I have a business coach because I want to get better at running my business, right? So I think having, a wellness coach, right, or access to content from a wellness coach that's able, that you're able to check in with, something like that will be helpful. Something else is challenges, right? I think when you incentivize people to take care of themselves, it's going to increase the likelihood of them taking care of themselves, right? So for me, wellness challenges, I've been doing them for years now, just individually, but doing it as a group can be a great way to build that connection, especially within your organization. And you all are working toward a similar goal, so now you're able to share, what's working, what's not working, and be able to learn and grow together as you're working toward whatever that goal is. So if you're looking for a more emotionally healthy workplace, you can set, a mindfulness challenge in place to where there's a certain, number of times, a certain amount of minutes that you're looking to hit each week. And, you're tracking that in a particular way where everyone can, submit their information. And then of course, the person that gets the most or the top three, right, get whatever, that incentive is, right? So those are
Mhm.
some, some strategies that you can employ in the workplace to be able to increase accountability as you are, working toward changing your mindset and your behaviors.
Yeah, we love a good incentive. But I'm happy that you brought that up as well, which will kind of transition to the next question I have. Let's talk about collaboration because I heard it come up in an accountability partner into incentive programs within your organization. So let's discuss what collaboration can look like collectively within your organization, within a team, across various organizations as a collective. So I guess my question is, what role can nonprofit orgs play in making mental wellness collective, not just personal, and something that can be woven into how teams, programs, and leadership operates? So Ray, I'll begin with you, and then Bianca would again love to hear your insights on this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really starts with the development of those things, right? When you're developing programming, right? Having mental health or
Mm,
emotional well-being in mind so that you're, integrating elements that are, pointing back to the importance, right? And integrating elements that help, the people that are participating develop the skills that they can leverage to promote their mental and emotional health. I also think understanding people's like personal passions, right? When you think about individual contributors, we all have a story, and some people have stories that they have overcome some mental hurdle. They have access to resources or things that they've learned that has helped promote their mental health. But if we aren't open to hearing what people are passionate about or are good at in that regard, then we miss out on opportunities to, have champions for mental health within our organization that can fill, the different spaces that then we can create greater collaboration. So I think, making sure that we are just opening space for people to kind of share what it is that, their story is, and then, understanding how placement can work to be able to, allow them to champion mental health within our organization. Those are a couple that come to mind.
mm,
So I'll hand it over to Bianca.
mm,
Bianca now.
No, you was you was talking right. Absolutely. Those collaboration is about seeing and hearing what other people's gifts are that they can bring to your organization for expansion. A lot of times I feel like we get into these places where we think that collaboration has to be um agency to agency, right? But it can really be person to person. When you all posted the question about what your self-care act is, my good friend Christy in here, who also likes plants, right?
mm,
Has when we talk about what those types of things are, you're able to bring wellness into a setting that doesn't always look like mental health care, right? The presence of plants strategically throughout your space can also promote mental health wellness. Being able to, so I have with my church, I have a program where we work on our mental health ministry that includes plants, mental health, and scripture. Why? Because they're all parts of the same thing. So when you are talking collaboration and you are learning your members, they bring other gifts outside of what their job description says. And so, how do we promote wellness? By encouraging people to be themselves. So, for what would that look like? We have monthly PDs, we have monthly, emails for reminders and things. We throw mental health into those activities, yes. But we have moments where we have maybe somebody brings in a company plant, right? And you all start putting the plants together. You clean the roots off, you propagate, everybody gets a little piece. What collaboration looks like is taking
Mm.
what seems non-traditional or what seems to be not on schedule and actually tying it into the wellness of that person so that person can be productive for you later. And I'm always going to say get a plant. If you don't have a plant, get a plant.
That's a really good insight. I really love that. And Bianca, Bianca and Ray, we have a little bit over 5 minutes before we open it up for Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat if you have any. But I want to take a second to highlight some of the work that Rest Black Man Rest and the Phoenix Nicholas Center does, and kind of cover that for a second. So I'd love to just hear from you. How can organizations partner more effectively with therapists and clinicians or healing practitioners to help support mental wellness of their teams and the communities that they serve? Because a lot of the nonprofits that we work with are working with communities that are experiencing compounded trauma.
Yeah.
So how can they just do a better job, or a more efficient job, I should say, of partnering with therapists, healing practitioners, clinicians to just support the mental wellness of their teams and those communities that they're touching?
I think it's kind of a twofold thing, right? How do we increase partnerships is we start having discussions like this, right? I am not a big agency like a Eskenazi or an Adult and Child, or where you have these big names. So part of the way that you can collaborate is having more conversations with who's out there, who's really doing kind of the services out there.
Mm.
What Phoenix does is we try to focus on the micro and the macro. We do individual and couples counseling, like individual therapy to help massage that mental health field. But what our greater impact is we do city mental health planning as well as organizational planning. So what does that look like? Creating environments where we're shifting the narrative of a system. Indianapolis, I don't know if some of you are familiar, we have a 24-hour mental health crisis response team called the CLCR that can be accessed through 911 in times of emergency. And this is 24-hour, 365 program. Phoenix was one of the architects who create this program. So when you're talking about partnering, look outside of the box. What is it that your people are saying that they need, and find people in those specific areas. I love doing things like this, intimate conversations, panel discussions about what that looks like, what health and wellness looks like, because this is where you can spark ideas and change on an intentional individual level. Did that answer the question? I kind of talked around it.
No, yeah. No, that really gets
Okay.
at it. I appreciate it. Um, and I will be, to our audience, I will be sending out a follow-up email probably this afternoon that will include Ray and Bianca's contact LinkedIn information. So feel free to take a look at their websites or message them on LinkedIn. They're doing some really great work. And I just want to uplift the fact that this work matters. The mental health work matters because a lot of time it gets overlooked by the end goal, the report that has to be due, the more tangible, concrete things. But just because you can't necessarily see it visibly, concretely in front of you, it does not mean that it's not happening and it does not matter. So I just encourage everyone to, continue to take care of yourselves and those around you. But you can't take care of those around you if you don't take care of yourself first. So we have about a couple minutes before we open up for Q&A. So just rapid fire. Ray, we'll start with you, and Bianca will go to you. Um, if you could finish this sentence for me, mental health matters in this work because
Gerber, who
So
talking?
yes.
you can go ahead, Bianca. You look like you
Oh,
have
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
something.
didn't know. I didn't know the order. I didn't hear the order. I'm sorry, Ray. Go
No,
ahead.
you're fine.
Yeah, so mental health. So you said, okay, mental health matters in this work because,
Because
honestly, because it's foundational for not only sustainable leadership, but also the effective delivery of whatever, service that you are providing to whatever community you're looking to serve, right? You just mentioned it, Deja, but we can't pour from an empty cup. So, understanding that your mental health will determine how you feel, how you function, right? Your ability to be empathetic, your ability to focus, your ability to demonstrate resilience in the face of adversity. So if your mental health is not invested in and developed, you're not going to be able to operate at your highest level and at your highest capacity.
mhm,
So that's my finishing of that sentence.
for sure. Bianca.
Same thing. Mental health is life or death because it impacts everything about our being. It can exacerbate your physical health symptoms. It can cause new physical health symptoms. It can exacerbate, especially in African American communities, it can exacerbate issues with blood sugar and blood pressure. And as you see, we have a lot of type 2 diabetes, a lot of high blood pressure, um, because our mental health is not taken care of. But we will go to the doctor and get a pill, but we won't sit and do 15 minutes of meditation and mindfulness,
Right.
which can actually reset how your brain and the neurons in your brain fire if you are taking care of your mental health. So, to life or death, do your self care.
For
That's what I'm gonna
sure.
say.
For sure. And then the last question I'll ask, just again, rapid fire before we open up for Q&A. What would we're gonna visualize for a moment. You wake up, you're on your way into the office, you're getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, you head into the office, you see plants, perhaps. But what would a truly mentally healthy nonprofit sector look like? What would need to be in place structurally and culturally? What do you see in the office? Is there a meditation room? Are there plants around? What just does a truly mentally healthy nonprofit sector look like? Bianca, I'll begin with you, and then Ray, we can round it out with you, and then we'll open up the call for Q&A if anybody has any questions about the topic, the work that's being done, anything.
I would say all of those things that you just said are important, but it's hard to say what will one look like because that would pigeonhole it to say that this is the only way you can heal and this is the only way your mental health can be taken care of, and we can't do that because it's agency to agency, person to person. I get up an hour before my day starts so I can go talk to my plants, right? And it's part of my day. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's like that. Bianca, that's dumb. Don't talk to my kids that way. So it's not a cookie cutter. It's very much individualistic, I would say.
For sure, Ray.
Yeah, and for me, from a kind of like workflow perspective, I think leveraging technology, whether it's AI or just other automation, in order to free up space in the workday for the nonprofit sector, and not to have more space to do more work, but to have more space to engage in activities that help them recharge. So that's kind of what it would look like for me. It's just really leveraging technology in order to free up
Mhm.
space to invest in their health and well-being.
That's a really good one. We had a conversation last month over AI and kind of just shifting the mindset around or the stigma around what AI can be used for. Because, like you mentioned, there's so many different ways that you can integrate it into just intentionality and your mental well-being, let alone your automated workflows for work to kind of take some of that weight that you're carrying off of you and essentially help your mental well-being as well. So, yeah, I encourage everyone, if you haven't looked into AI a little bit further, please do so. It can be a very powerful tool if you let it. So um, now I definitely want to open the call up for Q&A. I see we've had a lot of engagement with the audience, and I really appreciate everyone who in the comments and chat box and whatnot sharing your thoughts. Um, Look like we have a question in the chat from Alberta. She said, "Hi, my name is Alberta Jose, and I work at Perscolas, Indianapolis. We're a no-cost training provider for adults, and many of our learners struggle with self-confidence and imposter syndrome. Are there any strategies or activities staff can implement to help shift their mindset and build lasting confidence?" Really great question. Bianca, you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry, this is up here talking. Very good question. Imposter syndrome is very real. And it is coming out of an anxiety of a narrative. There's a narrative tied around something that we should be doing, right? We think about some of these should statements. I should be at this stage in my life by this age. I should not have done these things in my past. And so when we have those narratives going back and forth, it creates this environment that the experience that we're living is not valid because it doesn't match a narrative. I am always going to say we're going to challenge the first thing we can do to implement lasting change is challenging that narrative, making sure we're not talking in deficits, making sure that when a client is coming in and they're having some negative self-talk, that you're pausing it, interrupting it, that thought pattern. It's called
Mhm.
thought stopping, so that you can shift and they can bring to awareness how often they're having those negative thinkings and just shift it. Like, no, you're not failing at that. You're learning differently about that. Um, Shifting that narrative is what I would say, working on those thoughts.
That's good insight, Ray.
Yeah, I love the self-talk element.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important that we're aware of what we're saying to ourselves about ourselves and the quality of that narrative. I heard a definition, or just a description of imposter syndrome as being a crisis of confidence masked as a crisis of competence, right? So you know,
Mm,
it's leading you to believe that you're not worthy of being in the space that you're in, when in all reality you just have to develop, you know, the confidence that you need in order to be there, right? So something that has worked for me, because I've experienced it, I still experience it as a business owner. But I I needed to understand for myself what made me confident, right? Like in the past, I know that I've done things with confidence before, so I just took time to understand, well, what's like, what did I have in place that helped me feel confident? It was, you know, having a haircut. It was, you know, my posture, standing up straight, right? These are different things that I can make sure I, you know, integrate into the different settings that I need to be in order to demonstrate my confidence, you know, fully. So I started focusing on, you know, what are these like small things that I can adjust with what I have control over that will help
yeah,
promote my confidence, as I am also, you know, working on shifting, you know, the talk that I have towards myself about myself, and my ability to execute in certain spaces.
absolutely. That is very, very real because the crown, it will do wonders. But I have a question in the chat from Tyler and then Jeffrey. I see that you raised your hand, so I'll pivot to you afterwards. Tyler asked, "Do you have any ideas for a guided self-reflection to get the process going?" Good question. Ray, you can go ahead and chime in, and then Bianca, if you have anything to add, I'll open up for you.
Yeah, I know, and I know Deja mentioned it before, and we promote or we put out a weekly newsletter, and each volume has a guided self-reflection, right?
Mhm.
So I think, you know, you can go to a publication like that, or honestly just type in the chat GPT, like, what are some guided self-reflection questions for blank? And I think starting with a question helps kind of start that process of thinking and getting curious, and then of course coming up with, you know, your own, you know, your experience around a certain topic. So, you know, questions around mental health, or, you know, things that you're doing in your day to promote your self-care, right? But asking a question, I think, is what kind of starts that process of curiosity, and then ultimately problem solving.
Mhm.
Sure. And I know that I also have done guided, I really like sound bath meditation and it's guided. So they're asking you questions as you're sitting there breathing and relaxing. And it's just a really good way to get in tune with yourself, Tyler. So that's also another avenue. But Bianca, please share.
No, all of them, all those are perfect. Absolutely. Um, Sometimes if we don't know the question to get started, because sometimes that's the hurdle, is we can answer a question if we had it, And so I encourage what I do with all my clients. We call it a 7 minute free write. And you set your timer for 7 minutes and you just do a stream of consciousness writing. There is no topic. You just write everything that comes to mind. Sometimes it's a list, sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's like, I don't know what to write. And then you go into write, and then you go into a topic. What that does, it helps you to see on paper what is actually in the forefront of your mind, what is actually that block. So if you're looking at how do I start self-reflection and you like, I don't know where to go, you write it down. Your brain will tell you what is actually in the forefront, and then you can massage it from there. Well, I just really need to say this part out loud. That's not really important, but I do want to talk about this.
Mm.
So,
And Christy dropped a really great just right up in the chat. I want to read it. It says, I think in the because it's this is real. I think in the nonprofit realm, we tend to think everything is on fire, which
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
meaning everything is a code 10 and needs done now. To shift my thinking from this, I bought a grid notebook with 4 slots to allow myself the time to critically think through what is urgent and important, what's not urgent but important, what's important but urgent, and lastly, what's not important and not urgent. This helps me to prioritize my to-do list and reflect on how I manage my days. Christy, snaps for you.
Christy,
I'm gonna
Christy, sis, sis. Oh, you
you're
can't see it.
blurred. Yeah,
You
you're
can't see
blurred.
it. Christy, and Christy's the plant friend, y'all, too. If
Yep.
whoever works with Christy, come on, friend.
For sure.
Yeah.
But Jeffrey,
Jeffrey had a question.
yep, I see your hands raised, so I want to allow some space for you to chime in and ask any questions you have as well.
I'm so sorry. How's everybody doing today?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, all right. So my question is when are we going to start opening more conversations uh about men's mental health as the aspect of things? Because um I have a nonprofit that I started, and it's called Brave, and I specifically deal with men's mental health. I'm in Indianapolis. Um, and from my standpoint of view, there is a lot of great programs out here for women and children. But when it comes to men, um, it's like, where do they turn?
Mhm.
Now, there's also a lot of programs out here for men that they may help you further your education. They may help you with job training. But let's circle back around to, what about me?
Mhm.
That mindset. I've had a lot of different big organizations like actually United Way have reached out to me. Also, the health department with like the fetal, I think it's the fetal immortality, something like that.
Mhm.
But it's like, you know, men, people don't realize that men, we're more than father figures. We're more than spouses. We're more than providers. We have our own struggles as well. Um,
Mhm.
so opening that conversation up a lot more, um,
Well,
teaching men that vulnerability is strength. That's one of my biggest things. It's okay not to be okay. Let me stop. Let me stop. Y'all go ahead. Let me stop because
Jeffrey, you gonna email me, okay? You gonna email me because that's exactly the reason why I started Rest Black Men Rest, is specifically because first of all, men's wellness, mental health wellness journey is unique and crafted. Because there's not a lot of information and studying on men's mental health. It's men studying mental health on women. So there is not a lot of foundational things about how those things look different. Where do we open it up is we have more conversations about what you're doing. And we need to email, because one of my events that I have is called Brave Through, and your company's called Brave. We need to talk, okay? We need to have conversations because it's going to come from collaborations like this, where we have to have these conversations and acknowledge that the man's wellness journey is inherently different. And I'm saying this as a Black woman who has had to work through lots of men's wellness journeys, and it should be talked about more. So you gonna email me. Everybody else, y'all can email me too. But we gonna talk later,
well, a
okay?
lot of people has also said too that, you know, I think society, not like it's the immense pressure that society has placed on men, and the to be these stoic individuals, you know what I mean? But they forget that men have feelings too, I guess. They also forget that they have their own struggles.
Mhm.
And, you know, with
Mhm.
my program, like I started in November 2024.
Amen.
Very fresh and new. I wanted to have
Amen.
150 guys by 3 years. I'm already up to 60 guys. Okay. It's
Period.
it's you know, it's but it's also it's like, man, like a lot of these guys like this is something that we needed. You know, it don't matter demographic background, religion, none of that. It's more so of having that freedom and that open space to be able to be like, okay, I'm being heard and not just seen. You
Mhm.
know, I posted it in the chat. You know, brave actually stands for balance, reassurance, acceptance, validation, empathy, and evolution. You
Mhm.
know, helping men become a better version of themselves, but
Mhm.
also knowing that it's okay to start being selfish for yourself, you know, because I have a hard time struggling with that. What you guys were just talking about earlier about the balance, you know, me and technology and stuff, it's so bad now in our era because it's like, okay, let's not work, let's spend time with the family. But when you look over and look at your family, they're on
Everybody.
TikTok, they're on their phones and stuff, they're doing whatever. You're like, might as well get back on the computer and keep networking. You
Mhm.
know, so you know,
Mhm.
trying to figure out that balance and listening to what Ray was saying, like, I mean, that I felt that because it's like, yeah, and a lot of people don't understand mental health until you go through it. You can talk to somebody about it, you can be empathetic, but until you actually go through it yourself and go through that journey, it's a different sense of, you know, being.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jeffrey, for coming off mute and gauging that discussion. We have one more question in the chat before we have to close out. Lydia asked, any suggestions for questions to help challenge negative self-talk slash perceptions that cause disconnect between employees in the workplace?
How to challenge that this often? Oh, that's a good one.
It's a
Um,
really good
so
question.
I had to reread it.
No,
One
you're
of the
fine.
things that I would suggest would be creating an environment of what does safe communication look like. A lot of times I see the word disconnect, and I think of tension and trouble kind of within the workplace. And a lot of times when we have tension and struggles, it can come from a place of either misinformation or miscommunication. Um, but it can feel malicious. So creating an environment where we can have a moment to pause and reflect how we are experiencing what is being said. Hey, I feel hurt by what was just said. Is that the message that you're trying to give me? If not, can you help me understand? Creating and shifting to our I feel statements will help to open the door and have people either so they got to tell you to your face, yep, I meant to hurt you, or they have to sit and reevaluate how they communicate, but giving grace on both sides.
For sure. And then Ray, would you like to add on to that before we close out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, the like how would I view this situation if I were in my colleague's shoes, right? Like thinking about it from their perspective, I think it's so important that we explicitly ask so that we get that perspective. But in the meantime, just doing your best to think about it from their perspective, I think would be beneficial. I know a thought like exercise that has worked for me is like understanding that like it's kind of irrational for me to say that if I was that person with their same life experience that that I would have behaved any differently. And for me that naturally diffuses that initial like anger or whatever arises in that moment and gives me the space to just get more curious about well what is it that caused them to say this or do this, and then it creates space for greater dialogue. So that's all I'd say.
For sure. Well, a virtual round of applause for just our panelists today and our audience. Everyone was great. This was, again, just such a meaningful discussion. Ray, Bianca, we really appreciate you guys starting your weekend off with us bright and early. This was just very, very powerful, if I could speak for the group in saying that. And we really appreciate you guys sharing your insights, tools, strategies to, help making the workplace and this industry that we work in a much more healthier space to be in mentally. So again, I'll be including their contact information in the follow-up email, but thank you all for being here for this conversation. And we really hope to see you at the next call on May 16th, just covering volunteer engagement. So thank you guys
Make
again.
up that 5,000.
Not saying they're not. They're just on pause at the moment.
Oh, maybe Brenda's not. There she goes. Okay. Thank you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you so much, Ray, Bianca. You guys were literally amazing. If you guys are okay with it, I'm going to include your LinkedIn information in the follow-up email so people can, reach out and connect, as well as your email. I'm going to CC it. So amazing, amazing insights. This was awesome.
Perfect. No
Thank you.
problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to connect. That's why I'm still here. I'm trying to connect.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Shoot me an email, Jeffrey, especially with the work that you're doing. We can schedule a time for either a meeting. We can go grab lunch or something, but let's
Yeah.
talk. Shoot me an
No,
email.
for
Okay?
sure. I actually had a meeting yesterday with he's the president, city council of op.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a meeting with him last night. He actually had one with me one-on-one, and
Good.
it was so great. It was so great, and he listened, and I know he felt that.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. Yeah.
but yeah,
Definitely.
as long as I get your email, I'll send you information. I look forward
Perfect.
to learning from you guys. Been in the field longer than I have, way longer. I'm still just getting my feet wet, and I appreciate the information from all of y'all. Like this is stuff that I struggle with, that balance, like for real. Like
Yeah.
that's hard. Like I'm like I want to play the video game, but that's stupid. Why would I play the video game when I could be networking and trying to do these things? It's hard. It's really hard to shut off that faucet.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate you
Well, I'm
coming.
happy that we were able to share a learning space together. Jeffrey, I'll be sure to include their information there for you to reach out. And if there's ever anything I can do, Ray, Bianca, Jeffrey, anyone to be a resource as well or a vessel in this work, please do not hesitate to reach out. So thank you guys
Awesome.
again.
Yes.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you, Deja.
Have a good
Bye.
one.
Have a
Bye.
good weekend.